You're watching CHCO-TV's gavel-to-gavel coverage of the July 29th, 2025 Special Council meeting for the town of St. Andrews. I'm Florence Mitchell. Today's meeting focuses on the Market Wharf and Market Square refurbishment project. Steve Saunders will present to Council regarding the report by Gemtech Engineering, and Council will move to authorize the issuance of tender for the wharf approach replacement. Now let's join Council at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex Council Chambers in St. Andrews.
Call together the special council meeting tonight, Tuesday, July the 29th at 2025 at 6:20 p.m. at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex in the Council Chambers. A is the recording of attendance, and I see we have everyone present that's on council right now. So they're all present and accounted for. Thank you for coming tonight. The land recognition, we want to say that we are on the unceded traditional territories of the Beskotomakati people under the umbrella of the Lowistigwe people on their traditional lands. Approval of the agenda. Could I have someone approve the agenda as is? Councillor Steve Neal. Seconder, Councillor Bennett.
Your Worship.
Yes.
Yes. I'd like to amend the agenda.
You'd like to amend the agenda? Can we vote on this first before we amend?
Sure.
Okay, no, we amend first? Okay, sorry. What's your amendment, Councillor Gomichelle?
Okay, well, thank you, Your Worship. As you know, we have strict rules for how we run our meetings, and we have the procedural bylaw. So the bylaw 2306 states that when we set the agenda for our council meetings, we would have a committee meeting of council 3 days prior to the meeting. To my knowledge, that hasn't happened, so that's 16.22 of the procedural bylaw. So that would be my first issue with the current agenda, which isn't really a big deal because we don't always necessarily follow that with setting agendas. However, when it comes to the second point I'd like to raise with regard to a presenter presenting for the second time on the same issue, I would have taken issue with that. So that's that's point 21.3 of the Local Governance Act. Says that without 2/3 of council agreeing that we can't have two presentations on the same topic. We've already heard from Mr. Saunders, so I was a bit surprised to see him on the agenda, given that he's already spoken. So that would take 2/3 of council to agree according to 21.3 of the procedural bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. And finally, a third issue I have with the agenda is the timeline for the disclosure of Mr. Saunders' presentation to Mr. Holder and all the other councillors here. The presentation he submitted with talking points was 2 pages long, and the presentation that he's brought in tonight, which he submitted yesterday, is significantly more robust than his submission. So therefore, Mr. Holder and council have not had sufficient time to review and give consideration to his rebuttal. So there are 3 issues with the agenda tonight. Therefore, I think we should skip all presentations and move to the business at hand, which is the consideration and passing of bylaws and
Excuse me, you can't do that.
the consideration and passing of bylaws. I'll remind everyone that this special meeting was called because councillors were on vacation. We had all the information that we needed to make a decision last week. We had decided, when Mayor Henderson was still here, that we would do the report for environmental concerns for siltation in the harbor. At the very last minute, we commissioned this report, 25K. We have a professional report in hand that states that there is no concern of siltation or environmental degradation to the harbor of St. Andrews if we...
Excuse me.
If people want to...
You have to be
Yeah.
listening
Or
to
you
the
have to clear
counselor
the
or
room.
the people that are speaking and not make any comment?
So we have
Thank
a
you.
report in hand, thank you, that states that the three things that siltation and degradation need, wind, waves, and sand, are not present. So whether it's a groin or not a groin is not really a concern. We've already had that report. It doesn't really matter, like, to be or not to be. Game, set, match, there's no sand, there's no water, there's no waves, and there's no, waves, water, and sand. So those three things are not present in St. Andrews Harbor in significant amounts. Therefore, we could skip the presentations and go right to the vote. We could have a backgrounder of 5 minutes or so from Mr. Spear, outlining for our audience how we've got to this decision, going over all of the different options, all of the consideration and time and money and effort that has been spent over the years, 7 years to be exact, to get to this decision tonight, which actually could have been made last week, because we had all the information last week. So by my count, we've now delayed 81 days going forward with this tender, which we may not be able to afford, but we've delayed 81 days. Our tourist season here in St. Andrews is about 100 days. And shops and businesses downtown have about 100 days to make their money for the whole year. And then you just break even in the winter, because we're just a small town of 1,500, as you know, Your Worship, I'm sorry.
All right.
So having said that, a delay of 81 days, so we could have had the tender, we could have already known if we could have afforded it, if we hadn't had all these delays. So we delayed, which was a compromise, and now we're at this point where it's time to make a vote. There's no more talking, there's no more presentations, there's no more Facebook events and opinion polls and all the other things. It's time for us to vote, so I think we should move forward to that. Thank you, Your Worship. I'd make that motion to amend the agenda.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gomichel. We need a seconder. Councillor Heenan. Discuss, yes?
For a point of clarity, though, I wouldn't say Mr. Saunders has presented twice. He did pose some questions in question and answer period last week. That is not the same as a hearing as presented. And so, while I understand Councilor Michelle's concerns, I wouldn't tie the two together.
All right. Council, with that note.
Mr. Saunders, sorry, Your Worship, has presented to us.
Just a minute. Councillor Neal is next, and I'll get back to you, Councillor Gomichel.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to add, again, I was going to mention what Chris just mentioned, or Mr. Spear, sorry. That Steve asking questions last week, to me, doesn't constitute a presentation. I'd also like to point out that, again, I was one of the councillors who was away last week, and I have not yet had a chance to comment on the Gemtech study, which I was severely pushing for. And as a precursor to that, I'm gonna, if I get the opportunity to, challenge the claims that there's no sand in the St. Andrews Harbor. I, for one, am not in favor in any way of stifling open communication. I would like to hear everyone's opinion. I think everybody's opinion is valuable, regardless of the time that we receive it. And for that reason, I will not support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Neal. Councillor Harlan, do you have something to add? Councillor Blanchard?
Sure. I think there's value in hearing from the public on this, but I take Councillor Gumichel's point. We are at the point where a decision needs to, well, we are at the point where a decision needs to be made to move forward with the tender. I don't think it's been fully explained, or I don't think the public fully understands that the decision on this design was made back in the winter of 2024, after years of consultation with the public. And I hope, and I know that will come forward, but there have been three, I think if I'm correct, public or open houses on the designs. There have been a number of council meetings where the designs were debated and discussed. We have gone through this for a number of years. I am certainly open to hearing things, but I think that needs to be made clear as to what point we are here in the process. And I don't think that's fully understood by a number of members of the public for whatever reason. I understand people don't or haven't heard everything along the way, but just because you came in late doesn't mean it didn't happen. And unfortunately, the discussions and the debate that I see on Facebook, there's a lot of that. And what I don't see is people, not so much countering that, but providing the information in that, yes, this has been happening over the last number of years. Just because you weren't aware of it doesn't mean it didn't happen. So again, I'm happy to hear what the public has to say at this point. I'm not one, as Councillor Neal has stated, to stifle that, but I think people need to understand where we are and what's happening at this point. But I'm certainly open to hearing what the public has to say.
Thank you very much, Councillor Blanchard. Councillor Heenan?
This meeting really, as far as I'm concerned, we voted, if we did a geometric study, we were all in favor, all councillors were in favor of this going to tender. That is on recorded, that is on the minutes, that is in the tape. This meeting, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, if we want more information, fine, but jumping in late is not going to change the fact, and if we do not follow what we said at that meeting, we're in we can have opinions, but that was set that night, that when we compromised and said we were going to spend $25,000 more of taxpayers' money, and it was agreed that if it was a favorable report, that we would go ahead with the tender. I'm just reminding the public. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Councillor Neal, Councillor Gomichelle first, and then I go back to, and Mr. Spear, hold on.
Hi, Council. I appreciate the debate, but we're getting ahead of ourselves here.
Yes.
We just have a motion
Yeah.
to amend. I'll remind everybody that we need 5 total in order to amend, not a simple majority as per the bylaw, but just hold off on actually debating the project and its things maybe. And right
Until
now,
later.
the debate's supposed to be focused on whether to allow the presentation or not.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Is that okay with you, Councillor Gomichelle and Councillor Neal, that we wait for a little bit
Yes,
of
I'll
time?
just interject that we have heard from we have heard from Mr. Saunders before with his concerns. We had a presentation from him before, not this one last week. So it'd be 3 times he's been at the podium.
Okay, but you were to wait, and now Councillor Neal, I have to let Councillor Neal speak because you spoke.
I was just a point of clarification that, again, to Councillor Heenan's point, it was not unanimous that we would move forward automatically regardless of the Gemtech study. So I have not been in favor of this all along.
Okay. Okay, Council, we need to vote on the amendment that Councillor Gomichelle has brought forward, that there be no presentations tonight, and that we move on. And we have a seconder, Councillor Heenan. So all in favor, say aye.
Please raise your hand.
Please raise your hand to count. 1, 2, 3, 4. And nay. 1, 2, 3. Did you get the nay? Councillor Neal and Councillor Harland and Councillor Blanchard. So it's no, but it's not 2/3.
It doesn't pass because, keep forgetting the mic.
It's not 2/3.
Sorry, Flo, maybe. It doesn't pass because it didn't meet the procedural to have 2/3 to
Okay.
amend the
Yeah,
agenda.
I knew that. So it did not pass. Now we'll go back to the original motion, which is the approval of the agenda. And we had a firster and a mover and a seconder. Councillor Neal moved it and Councillor Bennett seconded. All in favor of the question with the agenda as is? Aye. So 1, 2, please hold your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 for the agenda as is. Nay? 1. Councillor Gomichelle? Are you abstaining? Sorry? Okay, not a paper copy? Yeah, I get mine too. I've got mine. Did you read it online, Councillor Weir? No? Okay, so you won't have time to look at it, so,
Councilor Weir's agreed just to be given a paper copy the night of the meeting. Because
Okay.
it'll be electronic until tonight.
okay, so that's 6 to 2. Mr. Spear, the 2 against were, no, there's only 1 against, Councillor Gomichelle. So it's 6 to 1. So it's carried. We can go on with the agenda as is. All right. Disclosure of conflict of interests is the next. Anybody have a conflict with tonight's agenda? No. Seeing none, there's none. Presentations. The one we have online on our agenda is Mr. Steve Saunders' discussion on Gemtech report. Mr. Saunders?
Good evening, Your Worship, councilors, and thank you, Mr. Spear.
Oh, hold on. Our electronics is not caught up to us.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Saunders, to interrupt you.
I do believe, Your Worship, that we still need to have 2/3 of councilors agree to have this presentation for the second time. It's right in the bylaw, 2306, 21.3. You need 5 councilors to agree to have a presentation for the second time on the same issue. So
So, Mr.
maybe the agenda passed, but we still have to have a 2/3 vote to
For
hear this
the,
presentation for the second time.
I thought if it was in the agenda, we would not
Thank you, Your
need-
Worship.
Counselor Spear? I mean, Mr. Spear?
Mr. Spear, that's a call of the chair, but can you hold on for
Sorry.
a minute? I might have disconnected the Zoom link. Just give me a
Okay.
second.
Oh.
Are we all right? Okay, I know. Just a minute. I know. As is, I know. Okay, Mr. Spear, I have a question. We just voted on the agenda and accepted it 6-1.
Yes.
That does not include what is on the agenda, which is a presentation by Mr. Saunders, or does it include it, or do we have to vote on that as a separate issue? I'm just asking because I'm new at this, and I'm sorry, people. I'm learning the ropes just as you're learning the ropes, so.
I mean, if Councillor Gumashall wants to call a vote again about repeat,
Oh, okay, hold on, Mr.
But
Mr.
the-
Gomashall, Councillor Gomashall.
we have disagreement among councillors about that. That it was a different presentation a while ago, Councillor Gumashall. So if you want to make a motion not to allow it because you feel he's presented it twice, we can, you can make that motion again.
Now? Before we start? We just accepted the agenda. But to do what you want to do you want to put a motion forward?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to seem obstinate, but to present twice on the same topic, according to the bylaws, 2306, the procedural bylaw for the organization and operation of the council of the town of St. Andrews, as regulated by the Local Governance Act of the province of New Brunswick, states that in order to present twice on the same topic, you have to have 2/3 of councilors in agreement. So
Okay.
we approved the agenda, no problem. I think I'd call the question on this,
Okay,
or
and we have-
ask
we
you
have,
to call the question.
We have
Thank you.
counselor and counselor that disagree on what they
Well,
consider
no,
a
but,
presentation.
I mean,
I
we can just make the motion I mean,
Okay,
it's simple enough. So Councillor Gumashall's moving that the,
sorry, Mr.
I'd like to
Saunders.
call a point of order here. Again, I would make the argument, we have passed the agenda with Mr. Saunders' presentation in it,
That's
with
what
a
I said.
more than 2/3 vote.
I can't comment, sorry, I'm the mayor.
well, actually, it's
Acting mayor.
rule from the chair. It's,
So, Counselor Neal is saying that we've already accepted the agenda with with Mr. Saunders' presentation in it. Is that not acceptable, or do we need to do the motion? That's what I need to know.
it's a call of the chair, so I would agree with Councillor Neal that if it's approved that, the chances are if we do a vote on excluding it, the vote will flip and it'll still be presented.
Okay, I'm going to make the chair decision then, that we allow Mr. Saunders to speak, because I feel that we should hear everyone who has asked to present. And even though, Mr. Saunders, you presented sort of last time we met, I still feel I would like to hear what you have to say. And counselors, you can choose to accept or not to accept. It's your choice. But I think once we approve the agenda, If I had thought of it, I would have thought of it earlier, Councillor Gomichelle, but I did not. So by approving the agenda with his name on it, I feel we offer you a chance to do your presentation. You can fire me tomorrow. All right, so now I'm going to ask the question about the agenda being approved. So now, Mr. Saunders, are we okay with the technology, Mr. Spear? Then, Mr. Saunders, you have your 5 to 10 minutes of time.
Thank you, Your
Beginning
Worship.
now. Sorry.
Councilors and Mr. Spear for giving me a chance to speak. Just by point of protocol, this is the first time I have been at this podium making this presentation. When I did it in 2023, it was an email to the council. Last week, it was 3 questions to Mr. Garth Holder. So I'm going to keep it as short as I can, and I'm going to try to keep the righteous indignation to a minimum. Are we ready? Good. If you don't know me already, I'm an engineer who specializes in something called CFD modeling. CFD stands for Computational Fluid Dynamics. This was just getting going in industry when I was in grad school, and I got picked up by a jet engine company for their R&D department. Funding was coming from NASA and other IRED sources. And if you know about NASA funding, it means it has to be shared throughout the industry. What this means is when you go outside tonight and you see a contrail going overhead, an engineer from little UNB had a part in the design of that plane. After Aero, I got into environmental engineering, where I've been ever since. Now, as far as the computers are concerned, it's for CFD modeling. The math involved with environmental is the same as it is with Aero. And so 20 years ago, I struck off on my own, and I've been doing CFD modeling as a sub-consultant for larger consulting firms ever since then. Clients are worldwide, but I also do some work for Stantec in Fredericton and CBCL in Halifax, and some local aquaculture concerns. I've embarked on several coastal engineering projects during this time. So let's get to the business at hand here. First item on the top of that slide says Gentech addressed all specs in the scope outlined in their June 12th proposal to the town. However, there are some items in their report that require closer scrutiny. Now, having said that, I want to point out that I did not come here tonight to throw mud at Gentech's research and reporting. My comments here amount to what might be considered a peer review. Gentech did what they said they would do in their proposal, and I complimented Mr. Holder on his reporting last week. An important point to raise here is earlier in this process, I asked the town for a copy of their request for quote that went to Gentech but didn't get one. All right, so it's bad form to read through a PowerPoint, and there's a lot of little writing on there. I assume you've read most of this, but my point one is I'm saying these guys did what they said they were going to do, and they did their analysis for the 2-dimensional code. And I'm suggesting that something that is requiring this much detail really should be analyzed with a 3-dimensional code. The 2D mesh, this is item 2, that they used cells that were as much as 10 meter on a side. That's more than 30 feet if you haven't made your conversion to metric in your head yet. That's pretty coarse when you're looking at bits of sand being moved around, floating debris and whatnot. Third, intertidal zone, where the waterfront comprises everything from muck, that's very fine silt, on up through gravel and even some shingle and exposed bedrock. So the 4 samples that they took for their sieve testing during their field visit, I believe, were insufficient as representative of the solids transport modeling. And also, number 4, their evaluation did not include behavior of floating debris. They weren't asked to, so therefore they didn't. They didn't get into the visual impact of the armor rock a groin might present, even though this really is part of the environment. All right, so let's move on to the next slide here. This is what I'm going on about as far as 2 dimensions versus 3. The picture on the left is Gemtech's figure 3.2, and it shows the computational mesh that they used for the research area. And you can see what I was talking about earlier. Those triangular elements are their computational cells, and they measure about 10 feet on a side near the wharf. You can use the wharf head for scale. And then out in the middle of the harbor, they're as much as 20 or 30 feet on a side. I didn't have very long to work on it, but I made a 3D model, and you can see it there on the right. That's a plan view of it, and my cells are probably on the order of about a meter a side. And then down below there is a section close to where the end of the rock wall will be, and you can see a vertical slice of what the mesh in the Z direction would look like. Gemtech's model doesn't have any mesh in the Z direction, and I'm maintaining that you need that in order to seriously replicate what current and sediment is going to do. That mesh there is AI generated, and it still needs a little bit of work, but you can see that I have multiple layers against solid surfaces like the vertical columns and the rock wall. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Is it working?
Is your mic on?
Oh, I was just saying, move on to the next slide.
No, I was getting hints from the producers about
I ran some currents through my model, and I don't really think there's enough time to get into this. If you want, we can come back to this when you have questions. You can see the Gemtech version of the whole harbor on the right, and then you can see mine on the left. This is very much a work in progress. It's 2 days of simulation, whereas it would probably take a month in order to get what's really good. One thing we can conclude from this is Vincent van Gogh was ahead of his time. All right, next slide. All right. These show the sediment sampling locations that the Gemtech people took. It shows 4 locations where samples were taken for sieve testing in their lab. Now, for you folks who are unfamiliar with sieve testing, you take your sample, dry it out, and then you weigh it, and then you pour it into a top of a set of progressively finer screens. This stack is set to vibrating until the finest particles have made their way all the way down to the bottom of the set of screens. You weigh what ended up in each screen, and there you have your distribution of particle sizing. I used to do these things all the time to see what would happen when helicopters were hovering in desert environments. I feel that Gemtech had been asked by the town to, if Gemtech had been asked by the town to do a more rigorous survey, they would have collected their samples from more locations, particularly out at the head end of the groin and in areas where the currents would have been influenced by its presence. Anyone who has gotten a brand new pair of Merrill's Dirty out here knows that there's everything from fine black muck to exposed bedrock. All right, we'll move on to floating debris. Movement of floating debris was not part of the scope of work accepted by the town for Gemtech's June 12th proposal, so they weren't under any obligation to do this important element. This picture right here is a drone shot that's been taken in the last couple of years. You can date it by the presence of the porch outside the brew pub, but it doesn't have the little whale tableau on the front, so it's a couple, 3 years ago probably. But what's fairly obvious in this picture is you've got a mat of rotting seaweed that's in the corner, and if you look in back of where the Tall Tom operation is, there's another mat there. This is a fairly small protrusion out from the natural shoreline, but you can still see the effects that it would have. Let's see. Also, not only do you see some seaweed, but there's a significant difference in what happened to the sand. When that natural shoreline was there, those bars of sand on either side of the protrusion were not there. Okay. Let's move to the next slide. I think this is one of the concerns that a lot of people have with an armor rock wall is when there's seaweed, it's going to get lodged in the cracks. You can see that in the left. And if you look at the picture on the right, that's the yacht club. And there's a mat of rotting seaweed on the shore there. Now, when I was a sailing instructor in the 70s, the natural shoreline was all the way over to the left side of that picture. So there wasn't a big rocky thing sticking out. There was no mat of seaweed there. In fact, when we came down with our boats, there'd be people on towels who were enjoying a little beach. That's not happening anymore. And you see there's an arrow there with an exclamation mark and a question mark. On Friday, I went there and there was a rather robust pair of huggy pull-ups. I went there today and it's still there. So that kind of puts a point on the whole floating debris and what structures that stick out into the harbor will do to the rest of the shoreline. All right, next. This gets into aesthetics, which GemTech wasn't really required to look into at all, but it's probably why a lot of folks are here tonight. The image on the left is the back cover of the Chamber of Commerce's directory for 2025. People are coming to this town for that. They're coming to this town for an iconic wooden pier. They're not coming for the image on the right, which is a parking lot surrounded by R50 armor rock. Okay, next slide. 2 minutes, okay. Next slide. I think we can skip this. This is the one that was in the email that I sent in 2023. All I've done here is I've superimposed the 2025 proposal on top of the 2023. The amount of infill is roughly the same for both these projects. So next slide after that. This is a familiar view of Lunenburg Harbor. Imagine, this is a little bit of a thought experiment. Imagine Mr. Knopper, his first week on the job, shows up and says, I know what we're going to do to really soup up this World Heritage Site. We're going to put a big old pile of rocks right out into the harbor. And maybe we'll even build a Red Lobster on it. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. You are sticking around for some questions?
Sure.
Thank you. Does council have the opportunity to ask questions now?
They do. I will say there is a representative of GemTech on. He wasn't listed as a
Okay.
presenter, but if, just to provide feedback, but we could probably wait till to the motion section
Okay.
to discuss that.
All right. Council, will you wait for questions? Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Saunders, and we'll get back to you shortly. Okay. So that's the presentation. So our introduction, if there is anybody online that wishes to submit for at the end comments or questions during question period, mostly questions, it's supposed to be a question period, you can send them to clerk@townofstandrews.ca. So that's clerk@townofstandrews.ca, so that you who are online can ask questions at that point. So continuing on, our next point is introduction, consideration, and passing of bylaws and motions, of which we have the first one, the only one we have tonight, which we're speaking on, which is the Market Wharf and Market Square Authority to issue the tender. FA 250731, and this is Councillor Heenan's motion, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, Council, and audience. It's reference number FA 250731, and the subject is the wharf refurbishment. At the regular council meeting of July the 2nd, council was asked to make a motion to issue the tender for refurbishment of Market Square and Market Wharf. After a passionate debate, staff were instructed to engage Gymtech, consult engineers and scientists to do a coastal study related to the proposed infill, and the decision whether to continue was tabled. On July 21st, Gymtech's Mr. Garth Holder made a presentation on the findings, which were determined the infill would have minimum effect. Staff had originally planned to put the project out to tender in June to determine its affordability, but also to give the potential contractor significant time to plan, acquire materials, and mobilize for the project. With the urgency for a mid-October start, a decision needs to be made tonight to proceed or not. Otherwise, we risk the further risk on losing a portion of the 2026 tourist season, as well as significant risks to the funding made available by the two higher levels of government. And the motion is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews authorize the issuance of tender 2024 wharf approach replacement. I so move, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. We need a seconder. Councillor Harland. All right, Council. Discussion? See if there's no discussion. Oh, Councillor Harland?
So, to clarify, am I able to ask Mr. Saunders some questions at this point?
Yes?
Yeah,
I thought we were
I
gonna-
mean, it's a flexibility, yeah, I mean, yeah. Would have been better before we proceeded, but that's
Okay,
okay.
sorry.
Usually during the motion time, it's just between council.
Sorry, did I miss that? Did we ask?
No,
Was there?
I asked.
Yeah, I didn't
weren't
think we were
the
given an
That's my
opportunity.
fault.
Okay.
So,
No.
Mr. Saunders, if you could come back to the podium. Councillor Harland has some questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Saunders, for your presentation. So I just have a couple of questions. So if I understand correctly, your suggestion was that the modeling would have been more appropriate in 3D versus 2D. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so are you able to give us a sense if Gemtech or if the modeling had been done in 3D, do you have a sense of how much more silt that may have indicated? Like, how do we know that that there would have been a significant difference in the amount of silt?
I don't think we know until we'd looked at the model.
Right. So
That's why you do the model.
I appreciate that. But so you can't give us a sense of how much of a difference that would make?
No, not right here.
Okay. And so I just also want to clarify about the seaweed. So what I understood you to say in the presentation is that as a result of the armor stone that is currently around the yacht club, that as a result of that jutting out, that's what's contributing to the amount of seaweed that we see collected. Is that correct?
Yes.
So how do you come to that conclusion? Because I'll say I see lots of beaches where there is a collection of seaweed and they don't have armor stone. So I'm just not understanding the correlation between the two.
It's not so much the armor stone, it's the jutting out of something. So that changes the pattern of the flow.
So if there was a natural jutting out, I'm to infer then that there would be an increase in collection of seaweed.
Yes, and you can
Because
find
lots
that.
of beaches have seaweed.
Yes, and you can find that all along the shore here.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harland. We might as well, Council, if you have questions for Mr. Saunders, to go through them now. Anybody else? Councillor Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. So I'm going to go back to the sediment grain size part of it because that is a little near and dear to me. That is what I do in my day job. I actually operate a sediment grain size lab as part of a national monitoring program for DFO. So the question about the presence of sand or not, and again, maybe Mr. Holder, I know he's online, can chime in on this as well, but I know in the report it was mentioned repeatedly that there was no sand present, and to the point where they actually had to introduce 20 centimeters of it to run the model. Yet, as I go through the report, figure 2.3, the graph showing the grain size distribution, is, from what I can tell, all sand. As is on table 2.1, where it shows the 4 samples that were collected being 94, 92, 75, and 72% sand. So, I mean, there's no question in my mind that there is sand, silt, and probably clay particles there as well. And the question, I guess, is going back to the sieve pipette method, or whether it's sieve and hydrometer, is something that I know from our lab, from a national monitoring program, we no longer employ because it just doesn't have the fine resolution to get that silt and clay particles. And again, that seems to be present from figure 2.3 in the report, where the particle size seems to stop at 0.1 millimeters, so 100 micron. So we basically haven't quantified anything below that level, which again is getting into the silt and finer particles that are present there. And I believe during the presentation, Mr. Alistair Fox made that comment that there is clearly silt all around the cribbing down there on the wharf. The question about the number of samples, again, for a typical aquaculture site from BC to Newfoundland, I mean, we would do 50 plus sediment samples just to roughly quantify the bottom sediment that's present there. So 4 samples for me, from a scientific perspective, has got 0 statistical power. There's just not enough evidence there to make the claim that there is no sand present. I know there's no question in that, but what I was getting at is, again, from your experience with that method, would you agree again that we are missing those fine silt, possibly clay particles that we all know are present on the beach? It was, again, stated numerous times that the bottom was sand, gravel, rock, and seaweed, which I know there's lots of seaweed present, but seaweed is not a bottom substrate. That is an organism living on the bottom substrate. But then throughout the entire report, there's mention of no sand. So again, I wrestled with that when the graphs and the tables seemed to show sand, but it was clearly stated that there is no sand. So again, just going back to the 4 samples, the power of that in your opinion, and the sieve and pipette method basically missing anything below 100 micron according to this graph. Would you agree that that we're missing a big part of that picture?
Yes, yes. And the CFD code they used, DHI Mike 21, has several different algorithms depending on what size sediment you're working with. It has one for silt, one for sand, and one for gravel. And I don't remember in the report they indicated which one they used for sediment transport modeling.
Okay, thank you.
Your worship,
Yes?
if it please you,
I'd like Mr. Holder to speak.
yes.
Okay, I'm online here, and I think that you can hear me, is that correct?
Your little
Your little
Mr.
mic
Holder,
is
but we can't hear you.
muffled.
My little mic is muffled. I'll try the microphone
Oh, that's
on the
much better,
laptop.
much better.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you. The 4 samples were taken by our coastal engineer on low tide on the day that he made a site visit
He indicated to me that it was difficult to find an abundance of sand, and so he took the pockets of sand where he could in those 4 locations. And it's evident on the pictures in the report of either side of the wharf that there is a lot of rock, a lot of gravel, and a lot of exposed bedrock. So it is possible that he picked up pockets of sand where they were made available.
Okay, thank you for that. So basically what you're saying is that the notion that there's not a lot of sand is basically from him walking around taking observations.
At low tide,
Yeah.
on the seabed, he picked up the locations of sand where he felt that they were in the study area.
Okay, thank you.
So he's not considering the sand and the mud and material coming from outside of the study area.
Right, the suspended particles that Mr. Saunders mentioned. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holder. Any further discussion, Councillor Gomichelle?
Just briefly, living down there and walking the beach over a lifetime, you all know that the amount of seaweed changes with the phases of the moon. Full moons, we get a lot of seaweed, washes in and out. The amount of sand in different spots along the beach changes all the time. Down towards the blockhouse or at the trestle, each year the high points change, the beach changes, right? But I think the point of the report, and this would be for Mr. Holder, is a comment that there's not really enough sand to significantly impact the neighbors, because I think that's what the issue is here. It's not the aesthetics of the groin, whether it is a groin or not. It's, is there enough sand that it would significantly impact the neighbors? So that would be a question for Mr. Holder. Is there enough sand or not?
Mr. Holder?
The amount of sand that is moving in that environment currently, with the headlands at the, for example, the headland at the yacht club. The headland at the yacht club is actually a great indication on how things are going to shape up with the new headland. It indicates that it's basically the same size and shape as what's going to be planned at the Market Wharf. So it's almost like a true life model. And we don't see an awful lot of sand accumulating in and around that area at present. Some of the beaches that we have there are formed because of erosion. And a lot of the other properties on both sides of the wharf have taken steps to either put up a timber wall or a rock wall. And that eliminates any kind of sand that's going to form in front of those. But at this particular time, I don't think there's enough sand in the system that is getting into that harbor that's causing it to accumulate in a great amount. I see more erosion than I do accumulation.
Thank you, Mr. Holder. Councillor Neal? Oh, wait, no, sorry. Councillor Weir was first.
Thank you, Your Worship. Question for Mr. Saunders. You showed 2 pictures, I think, of actual rotting seaweed, 2 locations, one at the yacht club, another one up the beach, and used that as an indication of what would happen at the Armourstone, the new Armourstone going in. But I'm wondering how close the angle of repose was on the 3 locations, because that would certainly have an effect on how much of the seaweed would accumulate as the tide receded.
I like that question. It's a good one, because I'm wondering about the angle of repose too. And the example that I gave.
Speak into the microphone, please.
The example that I gave, the angle of repose was probably right around 30. Now, this would probably be a question for CBCL. What is the angle of repose that they anticipate that their rock structure is going to be? They have our 500 stone is 500 to 1,500 kilogram right? So if they were square, that would be about 0.5 to 0.8 meters on a side. And if they were spherical, then you're looking up around 0.5 meter to 1 meter size of spheres.
That's the exact numbers I got
Yeah.
on that
so-
size stone.
Yeah, and I have not ever built a rock wall, and so I can't comment beyond what I think the angle of repose might be. Maybe Garth could help us out with that one.
The contract drawings show that CBCL used the 1.5 horizontal to 1 vertical slope, which is about 33 degrees. And that's typically a standard for rock construction in the Atlantic provinces. A berm for stability will sit at 45 degrees, which is very steep, but we would typically not build a rock wall at 45 degrees. We would usually use that 1.5 to 1 slope, which gives a little bit more stability.
So the lower the angle of repose, the greater the possibility of it collecting seaweed and other debris, like soil, diapers, and the like. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other counselor? Steve, sorry. Sorry, Counselor Neal.
Point of
Hold on.
order, just for a second, just every counselor should be given a chance
Yeah.
before we keep going back to another counselor, so if anyone else wants to speak to this, maybe chime in.
Counselor Blanchard, Counselor Heenan, Counselor Bennett. Counselor Bennett.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council, and the many guests we have here tonight. I don't even know who to pose this question to, but if someone could answer it, I'm a fairly new resident here of the community, and I'm not completely familiar on how long this Yacht Club Point has been in its current location. Can someone answer that for me, please?
Commodore could.
Commodore could, he's in the corner.
Well, if you look, it's part of the front street when they lifted up the concrete of the front street. So that point is mostly Front Street concrete.
Which would be the mid-'80s
But-
from my recollection of the records.
Mid-'80s?
So,
Commodore?
so I'm familiar with the point, I'm just not familiar how long it's been there. So we're looking at 40, 45 years roughly in that location. Now, sir, Mr. Saunders, because of your intimate knowledge of the waterfront and the topographical nature of our shorelines and stuff, do you think that there's any significant amount of seaweed, sand, and silt that's been accumulating attributed to the size, shape of the yacht club or the material that was used in it?
Yeah, I think the photograph I showed demonstrates that.
So, living on the ocean, and I live right on the ocean, and I don't have any significant outcrops. I don't have a sandy beach. It's just a normal shoreline, and I can tell you there's nothing I can do to stop seaweed from coming in. I get seaweed, and someone mentioned it here a few minutes ago. Seaweed comes in and seaweed goes out. Occasionally we get a real high tide and some pushes up on my property, and it stays there because it's a significant tide, and there won't be a tide again to remove it for a long time. But where in the ocean, where in our bay here could we possibly go and not see seaweed on our shoreline? Is there anywhere that is immune to seaweed accumulating in any size, shape, or form?
No. Can I qualify that?
Well, you can, but no is the answer that you're giving us. And if seaweed is found in the ocean, and we live on the ocean, it's not unassumable that we would see seaweed at any given time if we go down to a shoreline. So, forgive me, I know I'm breaking this down to the simplest form possible, but it's the ocean. Everybody that moved here because they want to be close to an ocean. Everybody who grew up here chose to live next to the ocean. And no different than you see, like, for all of us who live on the seaside, during lobster season, we see lobster boats go by. That's just part of life living on the ocean. No different than when you go down on a shoreline, you might have to jump over the first little berm of seaweed, or you'll get your boots full of the muck that you were talking about earlier, right? Because when that seaweed starts to rot, sure, but it's the ocean. It's supposed to be there, you know. And I think that there's a significant increase in seaweed accumulation to anywhere where they're harvesting the rockweed. Because I know myself, I have hardly any rockweed on my shoreline, and as soon as the seaweeders go by, like the very next high tide, I've got a significant amount of accumulation of seaweed. So rather than blame a point that's been around for 45 years, maybe the most significant increase for seaweed accumulation would be the rockweeders that are taking the rockweed from our shorelines. Does that seem even somewhat feasible?
Possibly, but if you go to the waterfront today and look at that mat of seaweed that's next to the yacht club, and then you look along the shore to areas where there isn't a point sticking out, there's considerably smaller mats. Now, what drives seaweed is when we have a spring tide, which occurs every 28 days. A lot of the loose stuff floats around, right? And it gets deposited up on the shore. Now, it all depends on wind conditions, whether it stays or not.
Absolutely, sure. Now, and I think that we've kind of covered that whole point with the seaweed. So I would like to ask one more question, if I could, please.
Sure.
The yacht club point, its size and shape, we just heard, is very similar, almost identical to what we're proposing to do, or what the proposed tonight is to do for the approach. So we've basically had a model for 45 years. The shape and size and material that's used in building the yacht club point, is that something that could attribute to flooding in the neighbors' properties?
Only if the wave action brought it about. The thing about the yacht club point is it is a fraction of the size of the proposed groin that's going to go in where the wharf is, which means two things. It sticks out, because it sticks out less, it has less impact on the longshore currents. Also, the time that it is influencing the flow in the harbor is much less, because of it's not reached until the tide is quite close to being all the way up. Whereas this structure that's proposed is going to be influencing current in the harbor from about half tide on up.
Well, Mr. Saunders, you've been really wonderful tonight, and thank you for giving us the information that you got. I do appreciate the fact that you've given us a lot of scientific information. However, you just described the point for the yacht club not being similar to the size what we're proposing, but on your own map that you just, or the pictures that you showed in your presentation, it showed the 2 points, and they're almost exactly the same size. It's so close, it's scary how close they are in size, shape, like everything. Like even the angles are probably really close. So I don't understand how a model that we've had for 45 years and hasn't given any significant amount of frustration to the neighbors. Like I don't believe the town is, since I've been here, I haven't heard that people are complaining about seaweed accumulating around the yacht point. I know that we haven't heard any complaints about properties flooding adjacent to the yacht club. So like, there's a lot of fear going on right now, and people are saying that they want to blame what could happen if this gets approved and if we build the new approach as the way it's proposed. But we already have that already in our community. It's been here for 45 years with very little significant impact to the environment or to the community. So why would this new point that's just slightly west of the yacht club be any different?
Well, my exception to your comment would be that it's significantly larger.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Heenan? Oh, wait. There was somebody else in between. Councillor Blanchard. Sorry, Councillor Heenan.
I guess just a question for me. Are we in a question period, or are we in sort of our debate comment phase?
We're in a
still
mixed phase here.
asking-
We've invited consultants to
Yeah.
provide us feedback. It is unusual, I'm not
It is
gonna lie to that,
unusual.
but it's a hard
Sorry.
decision with a real tick-tock thing on it, so.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Well, the question, I guess, Councillor Bennett actually asked the question that sort of came to mind, I guess, based on some of the conversations that were occurring with regards to the yacht club, and that, like I said, that area compared to the proposed structure and what we're proposing here at the wharf. I also looked at it, and it, to me, again, not having the exact dimensions of the yacht club, you know, on Google Maps, you look at them, you overlay one over the other. It looks very similar. I don't see a dramatic difference. There certainly is a difference, but not necessarily a dramatic one. So that was my question. Not having been a resident of St. Andrews going back to the mid '80s, only having been here for the last 18 years, that was a question. You know, what, and less about the seaweed. I understand that there's concerns about that, but more about sedimentation and erosion and the impacts that the yacht club, that headland has created or caused over those 40 plus years versus what we're proposing here. And I don't know if we have the answer to that in the room. I don't know if there's been a dramatic shoreline change in that area, you know, since the 80s, since that structure was created. I'd put it out there, and I don't know if there's an answer to that question. But to Councillor Bennett's point, if we haven't seen any significant or dramatic changes in the last 40 plus years on that structure, based on the information that's been provided to us in the studies, and I appreciate Mr. Saunders coming forward as well and putting forward some additional information, and again, causing me to sort of pause and sort of think about that as well. I'm just wondering about, like I said, what can we anticipate, what can we expect, and if we have that real world model right there, I mean, like, the modeling is one thing, and it's as accurate as it can be based on what you put into it, but with that real world model right there, right next door, that's a question that I have, and I don't know if there's an answer to that question.
I'm not sure that we have anyone that could answer that question. So.
If I may offer an opinion, it's a modeling
Sure.
exercise, not an opinion of somebody at the last minute at the table. So, you know, Mr. Saunders might have an opinion, Mr. Holder might have an opinion, Councillor Neal might have an opinion, but it's all opinions at this
Yeah.
point because it's not data-driven in a 2-minute conversation.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and without that, like I said, without that, then I'm forced to go with the modeling and the information that's been presented to me. So you know, that's part of what I'm basing my decision on tonight. It was also other information that's been debated and discussed at this table over the last 4 years. That has also gone into and gone into my decision previously when we voted on this design back in 2024. Again, new information comes to light. I appreciate the fact that a number of people have stepped up. I'm getting more into debate than actually asking a question here, but maybe I'll just save that for a debate once we come to that point. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Blanchard. Councillor Heenan.
Thank you, Your Worship. And first, Mr. Saunders, I have to give you a very big compliment for, one, a good presentation and a very professional one dealing with 2 engineers. I think it's very nice that, you know, it's not, well, he said, she said, whatever. So I really like that. The issue that I have with this whole thing, Mr. Saunders, is I went to the 3 open houses that we had for the wharf design, where it was all presented, and I have a pretty good idea of who was there. I know you were there. Did you ever at some point think that you could have approached the town earlier with something like this, with this presentation earlier? Or did you talk to the biological engineers and the engineers that were representing the model, et cetera, that night or those nights that we were at the open houses? I find that the timing of this is rather late in the game, especially when we had 3 open houses and we had 580, I believe, surveys done. Is that correct, Mr. Spear, 580?
No, it's just a couple of hundred.
Oh, a couple of
193.
hundred, sorry, I apologize. We had, and as I say, Mr. Saunders, I knew you were there, because I remember. And I just really think that that was the time that this should have been brought forward, and this presentation should have been done to council at that time. I think I just don't understand
Okay.
what motivates someone to do the presentation 3 years after our open house. Like, I can't wrap my head around that, Your Worship. I just can't.
Okay, thank you.
Especially when we had the opportunity, and we had all the engineers here, we paid big money to bring them to the arena, to Shamcook, all over. We had 3 of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Heenan. All right, Councillor Gumashall and then Councillor Neal, and then we're wrapping this up to go to the tender, hopefully.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to hear a little bit more from Mr. Holder with regard to his opinion. If he could just restate his opinion on the what will happen to the harbor if we go forward with the wharf infill as proposed. Could you just reiterate that for us, please, Mr. Holder?
Your microphone's again muted or askew.
Mr. Holder, we
Mr.
can't
Hall.
hear you at all.
Yeah, no, I've got,
There we go.
I'm on my laptop.
Yeah, we're good.
Are
Thank
you
Yes, you're
are you
loud.
able to hear me?
Yes,
Okay. I'm going to refer to my.
Oh.
I'm going to refer to the conclusions of the report of that we submitted last week. And
Mr. Holder, I suspect you're turning away to look at a computer screen, but when you do, we're
that's
losing you.
exactly what's happening.
and when you turn away,
Been
we
there,
lose
done
your
back, wrote the
voice.
book, but just to keep looking at your screen when you're just talking to council.
Yeah, so I will try
You
this.
did it again.
Yeah, I will try this. Is that the St. Andrews Harbor is affected by the offshore winds, and so there's not an awful lot of wind in the harbor. The infill area follows the shoreline and does not.
I'm sorry, Mr. Holder.
Sorry, we can't understand
We can't
you.
hear you, it's just muddled.
Okay,
That's,
I'm going to have to ad lib this then, as much as I can.
Okay.
Is that the conclusions of Jim Tech felt that there would be no significant input to, or impact to the harbor. There was going to, the model showed that if there's sand available, it could accumulate into the corners, the sharp corners, as it is today. And the second presentation this evening showed that there was seaweed and some sand in the corners of the wharf currently happening. And that's not going to change very much. The designers of CBCL have tried to mitigate that by flaring out the infill area, and so that the angles are not as sharp. The report also indicated that there's not an awful lot of longshore transport to be had in the harbor. They had to introduce material into the model in order to calculate the amount of shoreline transport as it is right now. What we observe is that there's erosion that occurs in the harbor along the shoreline of the of St. Andrews, more so than accretion, and that is likely to continue. And we talked about flooding as well as part of the report, where the new height of the infill area and the height of the wharf is set to move forward into the latter part of the century without flooding. But sea level rise will eventually catch up, and there's an indication that flooding could occur with the tidal, with the astronomical tides and the meteorological cycles, and the waves could generate some flooding later on in the century. And that's the best I can do without looking at my notes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holder. You're welcome. And Councillor Neal, last round.
Thank you, Mayor Xi. So I just have a couple of really quick questions. So, Mr. Holder, again, in the conclusions, again, you stated if there was sand present, which, again, I've already made the point that I think if we had done a statistically significant number of samplings, we may have found that. But if sand was present, the report did conclude that erosion, some erosion and deposition could happen. Is that correct?
If sand was present, there'd be deposition in the corners of the infill area in the deposition, as it is currently happening right now in the corner of the Market Wharf and King's Pier.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Saunders, with the currents, and again, I believe at the start of your presentation, you did point out that you gave this to council, I believe it was 2023?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not at the last minute. With your best estimate, again, of those flow patterns, and with those fine particles present, is it not possible that we would see exactly what I'm looking at now on Google Earth, that the west side of the Yacht Club protrusion, we'll call it, there is no sand sediment accumulated whatsoever, whereas on the east side of it, there is a nice beach. Now, I'm guessing that's not by coincidence, but more by the movement of the particles.
Right.
So, to Councillor Gumachel's point earlier about the amount of sand that does change from month to month, year to year, that again is from the movement of the particles due to the currents and the wave action in the harbor, correct?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. And the one last point or comment, I guess, or a question, I'll put it to you as a question since we are in question period. The comparison of the Yacht Club versus what we are proposing to do with 4,500 square meters of essentially infilled asphalt is a little apples to oranges in my opinion, and I'm wondering what your opinion of this would be, in the sense that the Yacht Club is surrounded by houses, grass, trees, things that are going to cause a lot less runoff for the neighboring properties as opposed to an asphalt parking lot, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. I believe that will be it for Councillor Harland.
This is not a question, it's a point of clarification. So my colleague, Councillor Neal, and Mr. Saunders, you have referred both to the expanded Market Square as a parking lot. And I take exception to that. We have not determined as a council what the vision for the expanded Market Square will be. There has been no visioning exercise. We have to do that yet, but as a council, we made a very deliberate decision to not spend additional taxpayers' money until we knew that the project was going forward. So I take exception to people referring to it as a parking lot because there's been no decision as to what that will look like. So the aesthetics that you speak to, Mr. Saunders, with respect to the iconic wooden wharf is lovely. You talked about it as being surrounded by a parking lot, and that is not accurate, and I need that clarified. Thank you.
So I will retract my comment on the parking lot simply because I know that this council basically doesn't want any parking there whatsoever. Correct. Correct. So again, I called it a parking lot simply because, again, Mr. Spear can correct me, when this is complete, it is essentially going to be paved until we decide what we're doing with it. Correct?
No decision has been made.
Okay.
So I'll just,
So are we going to leave it as gravel?
No.
initially, yes, but not into the next year. It's until after the visioning exercise that we've asked. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spear, for clarification. Thank you, Councillor Harland, for clarifying that is not a parking lot. I cannot give comments. I can only steer this meeting. So I appreciate all the input that council has put forward, that you have, Mr. Saunders, that Mr. Holder has given us. With that information, we are going to move on with the tender. So thank you very much, Mr. Saunders. Thank you very much, council. What? We're moving on with
Just the motions and
motion
stuff, so we've
for
actually
tendering.
moved into there, it's already been moved and seconded.
Yes.
I guess
Now-
we combine them, but
That's
I would
right.
ask that, well, your worship, I would suggest that council not make any further requests to the consultants at this point in time, or the consultant as a presenter. Now it should be straight debate between fellow councillors.
So I need to ask for the debate again? All right, council,
Your
one
worship,
more time.
No, you've already made the
I've
mover
al-
and seconder.
yes.
Now we enter the
Now-
debate period.
Enter debate period on the motion. Only the motion, please.
To move forward
To move forward to do the
the
tender.
tender, to release the tender for
Yes.
consideration.
Is that clear, council? All right. Councillor Neal, I see your hand up.
I will go first, thank you.
You're welcome.
There's just 2 points I'm going to touch on. Again, I have talked ad nauseum about my feelings towards infilling our shoreline, changing the shoreline, the ecological, the economic, the biological implications of all of that. So I'm going to keep it to 2 points. One that was brought up in a previous meeting about the sea level rise and protecting people's properties. And there was a comment made that at some point, private homeowners are going to have to take it upon themselves to protect their shorelines. That I'm not debating. Sea level rise is real, but if I'm a homeowner on Water Street and I decide that I'm going to be proactive because sea level rise is coming, at no point would I ever be allowed to say, I am going to armor rock the front of my property and raise it by 1/2 meter with the potential to have any water runoff directed to my neighbor's properties. It would never be allowed. There is, again, provincial legislation stating you are not allowed to divert rainwater runoff of any kind into a neighboring property. I would argue that is exactly what Market Square is about to do. We have looked at the slopes around it. If you've looked at the final drawings from CBCL, the slope around that is diverting water off to both sides. On the Market Square side, the low point is going to go right between the Red Herring and the Seasons building. Again, based on the slopes that I'm reading off of their diagrams. On the western side, everything is sloping directly to the Day Adventure Center. And that brings me to my second point of accessibility. So I don't know why this hasn't come up yet, but the slopes around that western side especially all exceed what is normal standards for accessibility, which is 5% grade or less. So the slopes to the Day Adventure Center are all in the neighborhood of 8 to 10%, which to me is quite significant. Coming off of the approach to the wharf to the Day Adventure Center, there is 10.43, 7.7, 7.9, 7.9% slopes, which basically renders that side of it from the Day Adventure Center up to the wharf, in my opinion, inaccessible to anybody in a wheelchair or mobility impaired. The other issue I have is with the actual wharf approach itself. The new portion that is being proposed, where it will drop down to meet the existing wharf, is at 6.3% slope, which again is above what the town has accepted as acceptable accessibility limits. We have imposed these limits. I believe they're in our municipal planning, that, again, any new construction needs to be accessible. We have had brand new walking trails redone because they were over the 5% limit. We have had months of debate over a half-blocked section of sidewalk that was going to be in excess of that 5% limit. And yet we are about to accept it on what is probably our greatest tourist attraction in the town of St. Andrews. So again, for those reasons and all the reasons I've outlined before, I am not in favor of sending this to tender. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. Anyone else? Okay. Oh, Councillor Blanchard.
Just to appreciate what Councillor Neal has said. Again, I touched on it earlier in my questions and some of the preamble there, and said I would reserve comment until actual debate. Just to go back a little bit in time, in terms of how, and sort of go back in terms of how we have gotten to where we are now, and when and why the decision was made. Again, it's been mentioned and discussed earlier about the number of meetings that we've had going back, I think, to 2020, 2021, into 2022 and 2023, the public consultations, multiple public consultations, the surveys, and again, even now, I know, and I'm taking into account more information that's come to us through public surveys, not put out by the town, but put out through concerned community members in town via Facebook. I don't necessarily consider Facebook the best way for public discourse, public debate. It's certainly not something that is recognized by the council here, but we certainly are aware of it. So we follow. I mean, I follow that. I tend not to jump in and comment on things, but I do follow it. So I certainly take that into consideration as well. But even in doing that, and again, some of the discourse that I see on Facebook is different than the discourse that we have, the discussions and the debate we have here. Not all of the information, in my mind, is being addressed or discussed on some of those forums. And I understand that people aren't necessarily aware of all the history behind this, and they're coming into this a little bit late, but it doesn't mean that it hasn't happened. So when I see things about council jumping into things or making these quick and rash decisions and not fully understanding or taking into account, whether it's aesthetics or the economics of it or the environmental impact of it, those things have been discussed and debated at this council table. We have had information. Again, I'm happy that new information continues to come to light. I was one of the councillors that wanted the study from Gemtech because of some concerns that I had and things that had come up which made me think and made me ask questions that I didn't have the answer to. So I felt like it was valuable to go to get that information before we made the decision to go to tender. You know, in the interim, in that period, again, lots of public discussion and debate on this, and that's great. But a lot of the information that I see coming forward in that forum are things that we have already taken into account and discussed and debated, and it was what informed our decision back in 2024 to accept this design. It was based on the public consultation. It was based on the aesthetics, the economics, the financial aspect of what it would do, the number of seasons that could potentially be lost. There were, if I'm not mistaken, 5 different designs that were presented to the public back then. And again, we're not talking about one that won with, 51% of the public supported this one. No, but it was 37 to 38%, I think, favored this one versus the others, which I think in total between the 3 was another, 20-something% favored, though it's something like that. But it was 191 respondents in that survey that the town put out. 37% were in favor of this design. There was a number that didn't have an opinion one way or the other, but it was the majority of respondents to that. And even taking into account the survey that went out on Facebook or through Facebook, where another 71 people responded to that. Only 70% of those, so another 50, were opposed to this particular design. And if I go by the numbers, by the math just on that, those who were in support of this particular design versus those who were not in support of, but again, not one particular alternative. It was divided amongst several different alternatives. Again, not to the Facebook one, but to the one that we had put out. We're talking about 117 people in favor of this design and 106 who were opposed or were looking for something different. The discussion and the debate and the request for council to stop at this point and reset and go back, I understand where that's coming from, but my concern there is If we stopped now and reset and went forward and did the whole process again, would we come to a different conclusion, or would we come to another decision where, again, everyone in council is, or everyone in the community is split and has a difference of opinion, and we still have, we're not going to come with a clear majority. We're not going to come with a design that ticks all the boxes for everyone. There's always going to be a downside to whatever project we choose. There's always going to be, again, pros and cons to each decision. So based on everything that's come forward and everything that we've been through up to this point, I'm comfortable moving forward to tender. I have my concerns about what's being proposed, but again, there are pros and cons, and I have to weigh that like everybody else in the community has had to do. And again, I would say everyone in this community, as much as I see on Facebook people saying they didn't have the opportunity, people did have the opportunity. I cannot sit here and accept from the public and saying that they did not have the opportunity to comment on this process or be part of this debate or discussion in the last 4 years. I can't accept that, and I see it, and that bothers me when I see that, but I know what we've done, and I'm comfortable at this point to make a decision to move forward to tender. Again, as was raised previously, I do not see this as a parking lot, and I want to be clear on that, and nobody in council we haven't made a decision on that, and that, again, is part of the visioning exercise that we will go to the community on. So I feel like aesthetically, yes, it's different than what is there now, but I look at Halifax, I look at St. John, I look at all the work that they've done on their waterfront to make it a community-friendly gathering space. I think it's beautiful, and it could be done in a really nice way. And again, based on the study from Gemtech and other information that we provided, I'm comfortable to move forward. Again, yes, I do have some concerns, but the pros, in my opinion, outweigh the cons. And I do not see how another 1 to 2 years of going through this process, I don't know, I'm not convinced that we would come out with anything any different that would make everybody in town happy. I just don't see that. So I feel like we would just be delaying the inevitable, and we would come to the same conclusion. So that's where I am on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blanchard. Mr. Spear.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to clarify a point Councillor Neal made. I do want to say, he said about the stormwater being forced over on the sides. There is plans built in for catch basins and stuff. Because of the size of the new structure, there'll be additional water going through it. I can't deny that, but I just didn't want to give the impression that the town hadn't made designs to capture the storm water before it crosses into people's property.
Yeah, no, you're correct. Again, and I think I asked CBCL engineers that, and again, they indicated that there would be drains put in place. The concern is, again, that the drains will only drain once the tide recedes. So we have problems during high tides. If that high tide hits with a heavy rain event, I don't see where that water has anywhere to go.
I can't disagree, but that's right across town. That's not a Market Square problem.
Yep, but it's being amplified, is my point.
Thank you. Okay, here we go. We are going to look at the motion and...
More comments?
Any more comments? No, I didn't see any. Sorry, Mr. Councillor Neal. Councillor, where do you want to speak? Sorry.
Yes, please.
You've got to raise your hand.
Thank you, Worship. I haven't been involved for this entire process, as a few of us at the table. It has gone back and forth. I still have some concerns, probably have some concerns the day it starts, but that's typical of a project this size. I'm concerned about the project management. I've brought that up. The stormwater thing, I've experienced what Councillor Neal has said about the storm drains on an extremely high tide or a storm surge, in that the drains don't work. There's nowhere to go. But it makes it very difficult for me to make a decision because I haven't been involved in the process the whole way through. And but I've tried very hard to get up to speed on it. But I would hope that this would not be the end of the process of gathering information and improving the project where possible. And if the vote happens to be to go to tender, that doesn't mean that we award the tender and walk away and say it's done. I think there's still a lot of work to do even after that process is completed. So I just want to make those feelings known. There's still a lot of work ahead to get this project across the finish line. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ware. For the last time, anybody else? Councillor Harland.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you to everyone who has participated in this ongoing conversation. Public engagement, I feel, is critical for us as councillors to do our job. Doesn't mean that we always agree or we always agree with everything that we hear, but listening to our residents is critical. I appreciate the questions I receive. I appreciate being stopped on the street and being provided an opinion. I appreciate hearing people's concerns. I think that is critical. But as my councillor, my colleague to the left has indicated, in making a decision, we need to take into account 7 years of discussion and information and consultation. I also feel really comfortable that we as a council are very transparent. All of our meetings are public and streamed live. They are recorded and available to be reviewed afterwards. All of our documentation is on our website, and our website is very accessible. And town staff are very accommodating in terms of trying to assist with people getting information. So I feel very comfortable that we as a council have been transparent. For me, there are a couple of considerations that I think are critical. One is cost. We do have money from the in form of a provincial federal government grant that is significant, because one of the things we do have to take into consideration is the cost of this project and how much can we expect the residents of St. Andrews to bear in terms of increase in taxes. That's a consideration. That's a consideration that we consider at this table, I would say, on a monthly basis or on a bi-weekly basis. That's significant. The other consideration for me that is significant, and I have heard it from our business community, is the length of time that there will be an interruption to the wharf in terms of getting a refurbishment done. Our wharf is an economic driver in our community. We have businesses who rely on it, and as Councillor Gumichel said earlier this evening, our tourist season is a short period of time, and we have many businesses that rely on that very short period of time to make their money. And I feel we have to take that into consideration. One of the things for me around this particular option is that the hope is that we can get it done without interrupting significantly another tourist season. That is a big consideration for me. And the other consideration that I think is important, as Councillor Blanchard has already indicated, this is an opportunity for us to expand the footprint of our market square, which I believe should be the heart of our community. I do not believe it should be a parking lot. I know that's not always popular when we have such a parking crunch in this community. But I believe that our market square should be a place where people come to engage, that we have opportunities for events, that it is a place that we identify as being a component of our community as opposed to what it currently is. So for those reasons, along with many others, I will be voting in favor of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harland. I'll look around one more time. Is there any councillor that would like to speak? If not, we are going, Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Your Worship.
You're welcome.
Again, I don't disagree. I'm not going to argue anything that's been stated by the other councillors. I do, again, fully believe that we have been extremely transparent in this process, and there's been multiple opportunities for engagement. But in saying that, again, I look past the timing of the concerns that are being raised. Again, I will listen to concerns and complaints for, against, it doesn't matter, right up until the last minute. I think it's all valuable. Just because somebody chose to get involved at the last minute, to me, doesn't diminish the comments that come forward. Again, going back to the original survey, and again, my original opposition to this project, typically what I heard in response to that was that this is what everyone wanted. And I've never agreed with that. And again, the survey response, and Councillor Blanchard just pointed it out, it was 38% in favor of this option. It was 71 people that voted in favor of this option. Now, again, there was not a large sample size. I wish it had been much bigger, but it was not. But it was still only 71 people. So the fact that as this project moved along, and yes, we have invested hundreds of hours into it, more information comes to light, more people get involved, more people hear about it, and more people start to raise concerns. I'm sure if this survey went out again, we would have a far better response to it, and I really don't think the numbers would be the same. With regards to going back to the drawing board and starting over, I would prefer not to, but quite honestly, being elected to sit here, I accepted that. So if that is what I think is the best option for the public, then I would have been more than willing to do that. Again, I'm not typically the bleeding heart optimist, but I have said it repeatedly. I honestly believe that there is an option available to us that doesn't involve drastically altering our shoreline and changing the aesthetics of historic downtown St. Andrews forever. And I don't debate the idea of having a community gathering area there. I think that is wonderful. I think we already have that, to be honest, if we did eliminate the parking. And the comparisons with St. John and other communities that have done harborfront refurbishment, the one thing that jumps out to me is that none of them have a bordering rock wall that raises up above the gathering spot. Armor stone is used to protect against erosion in multiple places, and then it is typically built over top. The perfect example is the deck on front of Seasons Bistro, which is an absolutely beautiful spot. You stand on that deck and you stare out at the ocean or the seabed because he has cantilevered that out on top of the armor rock. Aesthetically, perfect. That versus standing in Market Square and having, I'm going to say, a meter rock wall in front of you is doing nothing but damaging our downtown, in my opinion. Regardless of what we decide to do to beautify the square, you're still going to be staring out at a rock wall. And that's something that I just can't support. I fully believe that that option is out there, that no, we will never get 100% consensus, but I watch wharfs get repaired all over the province. I spend my whole summer on the water. And to me, that option is available. We just have not found it. If we happen to lose this money, then so be it. There is plenty of other federal grants out there that I'm sure we can tap into. We have people that are willing to help us with that. I just can't go forward with this simply because we have a pot of money that we're about to lose. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. I'm looking around. Councillor Weir.
Thank you, Your Worship, for the opportunity to speak a second time. Councillor Neal brought up the survey, and having studied statistics for a few years, there's no statistical validity to the surveys at all. They're not, they're meaningless from a pure statistics point of view. It's not a random sample. It's a sample of people that were interested in it the month the survey went out. That's like going to a city where there's a GM manufacturing plant and asking people what their favorite vehicle is. Same type of result. So I just thought I would clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Weir. Councillor Gomichel.
Thank you, Worship. And just to reiterate, I guess I've already kind of said my piece, but just to reiterate, I'd like to thank Mr. Saunders for coming forward. He's a friend of mine. It's not that I wasn't interested in what he had to say, more so that I already had enough information, I think, to make my decision. Having lived through the Algonquin expansion, when the Algonquin went to 50% one year and 100% closed the second year, it's easy to go back and remember how much that affected the local economy. If we chose this option because it was the quickest way to fix the wharf, and it's not accessible if it's underwater, to have not lose a whole season, and we've already delayed by 80 some days, and that's potentially all next summer if things don't go exactly according to plan with the tender. Who knows? Maybe we won't be able to afford the tender, but we should already know that. So we've delayed enough. So nothing personal, Steve. I just had enough information. I vote for business. I don't want to have to explain to people why the wharf isn't done. I don't want to have to explain to the restaurants and the other shops downtown that I didn't do my utmost to make sure that the wharf was there and functioning and safe for every year, and we don't lose 1 or 2 years of having no wharf. So thank you very much, Your Worship, for letting me express my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Gomichel. Councillor Heenan, and this will be the last one.
Okay, I'll be the last. Thank you very much, Your Worship. The one thing that I have to say is that if whatever's done to Market Square won't be underwater when we have huge rains, and people won't be tripping over stones, and that's what I get the complaint about. And the Market Square is useless when it's raining because it's going to be underwater soon. And if we're gonna make our downtown section viable, the one thing that people are not taking into consideration is property values will go down if we don't have the wharf. If people can't come and go on whale watching, we're not going to. I had an email from someone out in Yellowknife who said to me, I don't know what you're doing in that town, but it's not looking good. This is a true email. And I'm telling you, if it gets out, people won't be moving here. And it's going to be an economic, as you say, it's going to be an economic anchor around our neck. And I want to see Market Square become a Market Square that can be used in rain. So thank you, Your Worship, for allowing me to say that.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. With that being said, Council, we're coming back to the motion that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews authorizes the issuance of tender 2024 wharf approach replacement. It was moved by Councillor Heenan, seconded by Councillor Harland, and now we are ready for the question. All those in favor of doing this tender say aye. And please keep your hands up till we count. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And nay votes, Councillor Neal and...
Sir, Your Worship, can I have it noted that I'm voting against this because I want
yes.
the wharf to be accessible to all residents and visitors to St. Andrews?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Spear, you will write that down for our notes. And that he said nay. Counselor Weir, you're abstaining, which is a yes vote in favor, so that's 7-1. Yes, 6-1, sorry, can't count. 6-1, I am counting myself, and I don't vote. So there you go. I don't even get a comment. All right, and so therefore, it is carried. We are finally finished this section of the tender. So carried 6-1, 1 nay vote, Counselor Neal. Okay. Oh, sorry. Hello, I got you. All right. Thank you, Counselor Heenan, for doing that. New business, there is none. Sorry, excuse me, we're not finished the meeting yet. So if you wish to exit, you must exit quietly because we're not finished. New business, there is none. Question period, are there any questions further? I have questions. Okay, questions about, okay. Come forward and state your name and state your questions.
My name's Christopher Kohler, and first question would be directed to Councillor Neal. I submitted a request to give a presentation tonight, and I'd like to know if you could explain why that was not even addressed.
I cannot explain, unfortunately, why it was not addressed. I don't know if you received my email. I did respond back to you saying that I fully supported listening to your presentation.
Indeed.
So why it never came up, I don't know. I apologize.
It says right here, I have no problems letting Mr. Kohler speak, and so on. So
That is true.
and
Count Mr.
But
Spear,
unfortunately,
which
we needed the 2/3 vote, and
Yeah,
Didn't
Mr.
get
Kohler,
back.
Okay, so
the communication was put out, and I advised council that someone had to bring it up to amend the agenda.
And we
That's
did.
all I can say, so council was aware. I will remind you, though, that we have a regular meeting coming up on the 18th. This thing won't be released, and, we won't get the results back till late August, early September.
Right.
So if you still feel like presenting,
Yeah.
there's time before
time
there's
to
an
do it.
award.
But
Okay.
there is protocol that you must submit 5 days prior to, and then on Friday, submit a paper copy to our staff so that it is circulated to the council prior
Right.
to your presentation.
but that would have been 5 days because I submitted last Friday.
Yes, but our council packages go out on Friday. It has to be submitted before that Friday.
5 days before.
Yeah,
the
5 days
package goes
before the
out.
Friday.
But we couldn't do
Or
that because
it could be done as late as
Mr. Kohler,
Thursday.
Sorry.
just,
Sorry.
I mean, it's been explained, but
Yes.
you sent it to the wrong address, essentially.
We didn't get it.
Your domain has to be sent to the clerk. You'd had my domain spelled out wrong, so we didn't get it until you brought it in person on Monday. So it missed all the deadlines. We brought your concerns to council to add
Thank
you,
you.
and they chose tonight not to, but again, you can ask to present again before a final decision is made.
Okay,
Okay,
completely different question then.
okay.
Could I be told the maximum dollar amount, or the dollar amount of the largest consulting work that has been done for this project? I don't know if that question makes sense. Got it? I can reword it.
Mr. Spear?
I would prefer if you, I guess, depends what you mean. It's a whole lot of questions there, so I don't mind supplying you information, but all I can say is that the cost of total design was $347,000, which council approved by motion a while ago, probably actually in January 2024.
Yeah,
When we
2024.
approved it to move forward. There's a whole bunch of costs before that council were looking at different options and different things. So if you want to email me or come tomorrow and narrow the scope of what you're looking for, or if you're looking for it all.
I can do that right now. So the biggest contract, what was the dollar value of it?
The design to CBCL for $347,000.
Okay, $347,000. Okay. And another question then. How was Pascoda Makati First Nations consulted on for this project?
The Beskoto Makati people did not come forward with any information towards this. If you're,
Right.
they have not come forward. They have every opportunity, as everyone else does, to come forward with their with their advice or whatever, they are allowed to come forward, and no one from the nation came forward.
Your Worship, if I can
Sorry,
add some clarity.
We did talk to,
Yeah,
sorry.
no, I just want to add some clarity, though, that part of the funding was First Nations consultation, and so I'd have to go back and look, but we sent, the Infrastructure Canada kind of told us who to contact, like what First Nations to consult. We provided letters to them asking for advice back, and it
And
went
we
back and
received
forth.
nothing.
Yeah, I don't have a log of it with me now.
And
It's a
that
big
was-
question. We don't mind supplying it. It's
Yeah.
just, it was a
That was
while
back in
ago.
the very first beginning, and no response from any of the chief or his council.
And even recently, DFO, the regulator, did a First Nations consultation as part of the Campobello project that we won't get into tonight, but, you know, they've had two opportunities at least
Yeah,
to
and they've
to
not
provide
come
feedback.
forward. So they have been notified about responding. We have had nothing,
Okay.
okay?
In all of the tenders or requests for work to be done, were they all done by phone call, or were any of these done through an RFP, so-called, request for proposal? Did I mess up that and it didn't make my question clear again?
I guess so. I'm not sure exactly what you're looking for.
Let me try that again. Were any requests for proposals, formal requests for proposals sent out for works done, or were they all by phone call, calling the desired companies such as Gemtech and CBCL?
So, under procurement law, we're allowed to engage one engineer without going to RFP. Sometimes they choose to go other. But early on, like 2017, 2018, the CEO of the day talked informally to other projects, and CBCL was highly rated. We'll just leave it at that. And without, you know, the concerns expressed. And so council continued to deal with them up to this point. The Gemtech study came in such a short notice. I just sent email to 2 or 3 engineers firms that I knew that could do it. I apologize to Mr. Saunders if he's still here, because I didn't know he did that type of work. But asking, you know, giving them very straightforward, you know, this is what council's looking for. I didn't have the expertise to get into the depth like they were talking back and forth tonight. I just said they want a coastal study to determine the effect this infill could have on neighbors, on the you know, sedimentation and the generations, and left it at that. And we had the response from Gemtech, and no one else can do it in the amount of time we needed to turn it around.
Right. Was their charge $25,000?
Correct, which again was approved by council on June the 2nd.
Okay.
Your Worship, there is a limit. I
There-
appreciate, and I'm happy to
Yeah.
share this with Mr. Kohler
Yeah.
at the office. There's nothing he's asked. It's just there is a limit on the number
There's
of
a limit.
questions.
Okay, how many, so what do I have to do to be considered for a presentation at this next date that you're,
So it's August the 18th.
August
Just
18th?
like
Yeah,
even make a formal request by email tomorrow. I'll add you to the agenda.
Right.
The big thing is you just had brought in your presentation tonight to me. We really need that on the Friday before you present, so council can look at it over the weekend. That's my only request.
okay.
If you don't
Yeah, well,
change
it's-
it, great. If you
yeah,
do, I need a
It's
copy.
gonna pretty much be the same thing. Yeah, okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you very much, Mr. Kohler. Anybody else for questions? Mrs. Kohler? Please state your name for the rest of the people.
Cindy Kohler. In light of the transparency that was said that was had, when was there a public open house showing the current design of the wharf infill and talking about the mitigation that had to happen as well? And there has been no 3D rendering of the current design either. It's previous designs. So there has not been an open house that I'm aware of, unless you can tell me otherwise, showing the current design, showing mitigation having to happen, having DFO had their input to change the design a little bit. And I don't think that was brought to the public. And all of those things happened this year. So it's not 7 years that I'm aware of, or you can tell me differently.
The public presentation happened 2.5 years ago when we started talking about this
Yeah.
last one, okay? And the mitigation only happened within this last year.
Right.
And so they weren't together at the same time. The presentation showed the different wharves. This front line was, or the front end was chosen by the 40%, but nonetheless by that. The mitigation only happened after we consulted with DFO and were told we wouldn't need any mitigation. Then we were told we needed mitigation. So the Campobello thing came forward as a way to solve the problem for St. Andrews and its
Right.
constituents. So we couldn't we didn't put the two together because they weren't done at the same time.
So in order to have a fully informed vote, you didn't have that?
We didn't have both times together, no.
No.
But
there's
everybody
never
has
been
been
one.
aware from council meetings that this is going on. We have never hidden anything from you.
No, and I've
It's
spoken
come
up as soon as that information became aware. I became aware of that information. And it wasn't through the town council of the new design, it was through Transport Canada.
Okay, Councillor Harlan.
Can I clarify? Because I don't know, when you speak about a change in the design.
Yes.
So when we did public consultations, October 26th, October 30th, November 9th, I think, in Bayside, we had posters of the 5 options.
Yes.
And on the posters included a pictorial rendering
Yes.
of each of the options, the costing, and the timeline.
I agree.
So that was presented in each of the public consultations.
Yes.
When we presented, or when CBCL submitted our proposal to DFO for approval, it was at that time that we determined that, or we understood that we would have to do a mitigation project.
Yes.
That mitigation project was discussed in council at multiple council meetings, but it didn't change. It did not change the design that we were going
So
with.
you're telling me that the design that was presented in October 2023 was the same as the design that's being done now?
Correct.
I don't agree.
Well, it is. I'm sorry, but
It's
it
not.
is.
I'm not sure. I guess I just need to ask Cindy, what information do you have
Yes.
that indicates that we somehow are not talking about the same design? Because that was one of the 5 options, and that was the hybrid infill was the option
Yes.
that council discussed and voted on.
I agree.
And that's the same option that we've been talking about all the way along.
I agree that it is a hybrid infill, yes. But maybe Steve can clarify. I don't know, but there is more infill now after DFO because they didn't like the 90-degree angles that were in the first design that was voted on with less infill.
My only comment again would be that I think we're both right.
Councillor Neal, are you using your mic?
Use your mic.
Yep, sorry. The hybrid option was chosen from the original beginning, from the original public consultations. But I think to your point, and I don't think you're incorrect, over the time, the drawings did change slightly depending on various presentations from CBCL. There were comments from us, and yes, the infill on the day adventure side did increase. And that was at the comment basically trying to soften that curve a bit so it wasn't such 90 degrees. So you're not incorrect. I mean, I don't think we've hidden anything, but yes, there has been multiple renderings of the hybrid infill option. Even one including, before the mitigation project came to us, CBCL came back with an option where the infill was drawn right back. And it basically went straight across the Day Adventure Center, across the front of the wharf, I don't know, we had that one for all of 30 seconds, which Councillor Blanchard and I have discussed. I loved it. I thought it was great. It was going to be slightly more expensive, but we had planned for that, or we had planned for contingency like that. So we had already approved the additional borrowing, and that disappeared the second that Ducks Unlimited came to us with a mitigation project. Suddenly it went right back to the full infill, and we were sending money to Campobello. So I think we're both kind of correct there. I mean, we have been clear and transparent about it, but I don't think you're incorrect in saying that, yes, there have been slight variations in the model. Again, up until the final drawings we just got those a couple months ago?
Yes.
May 10th.
May, right.
Exactly.
So,
Due to the
and
mitigation.
those, again, I mean, that's
So
the
the
drawings I
public,
was referring to tonight about the slopes being inaccessible. So
Yeah.
we just got that information.
has the public been fully consulted on the current design and including the mitigation required, the knowledge from DFO that fish habitat will be lost, and that you will have to spend upwards of $300,000 somewhere else in another community to do this project? Was that fully informed to the public in a correct way in an open house?
Not in an open house. We did not do that in the house. Sorry?
The
Just-
amount is
just-
in your documents, in your
The-
minutes.
But that's not
The amount that the
300,000.
town will actually have to pay is not 300,000, it's 150,000, based on an agreement with the biological station, because they also have some mitigation efforts with regards to their wharf construction project. So that was, again, also discussed in a council meeting. So the amount is, the total amount initially was 300,000, but through work with DFO at SABS, it's 150,000 for the town.
Okay.
And I think it's important just to clarify, we as a council cannot function with taking every decision or discussion point to a full consultation
I agree.
process. We can't. That's why our council meetings are open to the public, and they are recorded, and people certainly can seek any information through that process. But we can't, so we have been transparent with those discussions to the public.
Yes. But
And
so do you feel that this whole 7-year process has been something that the public, for me, example, I should have weighed in 2019 versus now, when this new information came up?
Okay, go ahead.
So I agree with Councillor Neal that, and the process of public engagement is not a finite process. It is it is a process that evolves. So as new information becomes available, my hope would be that we would have more questions or more engagement or a better understanding. So it is a process of evolution. And I think anywhere along that process, I appreciate feedback. I appreciate that engagement. So no, I don't think that you had to have submitted your questions in 2019 when we began this 7-year. I have to be upfront. I wasn't on council. We weren't amalgamated at that time. And was I fully aware of what was happening back then? I was not.
I was. And I was engaged then too. And
Okay, that's great.
just letting you know.
And that's great to know. But as she said, as Councillor Harlan said, we are very transparent. We try to be that way. There were minor changes made, but basically, what is going forward is what we had accepted, as most of the people had accepted. And we're trying to, with the mitigation with DFO, with Campobello, we're trying to do that. We have put out from councils all the information that we can give you transparently to let you know. And if you've been, which you say you've been following us along since 2019, you know that we didn't start this couple of years ago. It's been an ongoing process.
Yes.
And now we're at the stage where we must tender, or have tendered.
Okay, one question. When did this become about expanding Market Square for public space versus adapting the wharf for climate change and repairing the wharf?
I think that occurred when the change for the footing became apparent and there was more space going to be offered down at Market Square. And as Councillor Harland and everybody has said, we don't want it to be a parking lot. We want the visioning to be part of the people of the town of St. Andrews. We want a vibrant place that everybody can be happy with. The restaurant owners, the businesses, a place that can be used, not just for a few things, but for a lot of things. And so when that footprint was presented to us, we said we're not going to do the expansion of the Market Wharf till we get the wharf itself and find out how much space we have, what it's going to look like. Because at the beginning, as Mr. Spear said, it will be gravel, and then it will be covered over. So, and that is a decision for all of the people to make.
Okay.
And that's when we'll have to go to public consultations again.
So this
Yeah.
council is okay with the destructing one habitat to expand a public space?
I don't think we're in favor of destructing a habitat, but we're in favor of promoting our town. And with all that we have done, well, I could relate it to the deer situation. You know, we could wipe them all out and say that's over, but we're not that type of town. We're trying to do the best for everybody, and we have asked for all input, and we will continue to ask for input. If you have more, then yes, we will take it. As our councillors have said, we're willing to listen, we're willing to give options, but we need to do this first.
All right. I know time is limited, so I will send the rest of my questions by email, and maybe somebody will respond to me.
Yes?
I haven't had a lot of responses previously. And one last question. Has council considered the risk of litigation and the cost that that would bring to the town by neighboring property owners?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe so.
No, that's a very real issue.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just on the point of litigation from the neighbors, we've received letters of support from the Seasons by the Sea Bistro and the owner of that, and we've also seen today we got another letter from the people that own the hardware store and the.
Sorry, no more questions.
Ask about the letters
No,
that you
no,
got opposed to
no,
it, or
no.
why Seasons wants that
No,
done?
sorry. Councillor Bennett was speaking when you interrupted. Councillor Bennett, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's thank you, Your Worship. Anyways, I was just trying to point out the fact that the adjacent property owners are in support of the process that we're approving tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excuse me, Mrs. Kohler, you cannot speak out. Mr., I can't even remember your name, Kevin, sorry.
Not
Please
offended.
speak.
So, just two quick things. And I know,
Simmons.
And I know
Mr. Simmons.
Mr. Spear will know, but the second one I'm going to bring up. First one, if everybody would attended or even watched the September 2023 council presentation on the wharves, there was 5 wharves. One of the wharves didn't meet any mitigation, gone. 2 were 18 months. So 2 would have took out a full tourist season and 18 months. So it was down to a hybrid infill and a full infill, but nobody liked the full infill. Hence, hybrid infill end up winning out in the end. My second one is visioning exercise. Yes,
Yeah,
there has
questions.
been one. I attended quite a few with Chris. You guys can go watch the 3D rendering, flybys, drones, paver squares, downfilled lighting, little bar areas where people could sit. People for 250 chairs out in the square, tables and chairs stay there all the time. It was going to give an opportunity for some of the restaurants in town to allowed to sell their food. People go out there. There was even chatter at the time about people being able to, and I know there's a lot of work for this, but people being able to take their alcohol beverages with them from the restaurants and actually sit there and have a beer. But now that the law allows us with the province to sell like a beer for takeout. But I remember seeing all these visioning exercises because the buildings all around the square were included in the visioning exercises. So Steve McLeod owned the post office at the time. Carol Savoy and Jeannie Langley owned my building. They asked me to attend these exercises. And I think Dan was attending. He had bought Cottage Craft at the time. So visioning exercises are done. You guys have it. It's 3D rendering. It was really kind of cool. Flybys, downhill lighting, talking about one of the big pushes was how do we get people when they're driving down Water Street to awe and move their heads to Market Square. A couple designs had a big pillar with huge Market Square in steel. One of the suggestions was moving the cenotaph out to the street, out to the sidewalk. So when people drive by, they go, oh, what the hell is that? Oh, what the hell is that, right? And where the two lines that go down each side the walkway, those were originally designed to have mini piers go out so people could walk out into the bay. I mean, we're talking about a totally different thing now. And then originally they had talked about where the cannons are, building a nice stage that was permanent, but with lit poles on each side. But if you wanted to turn in a stage, they had it so you could pull out from behind, you pull them out and it forms a backdrop so that you could actually stand on the stage, not see the wharf.
Mr. Simmons, I have
Anyways,
to get your question.
There was no question. I just want you to know that there's a visioning exercise that was done on the square. And you guys might not be aware of it, but the visioning exercise was done and Chris has it.
Okay, thank you.
2017, just to be clear.
Yeah, 2017, so thank you, we are aware of it. All right, any questions from the rest of the people?
Your worship, there's some online that I
Okay.
and I do have an email or two.
All right.
That will give,
And
if I can remember how to do all
Mrs.
this.
Sims has a question, so while we're waiting for you to get connected, Mrs. Sims, if you'd like to come to the podium and ask your question. Thank you.
Susan Sims, I live in St. Andrews. I have two questions. My first one is, at the last council meeting I attended, it was brought up that people from the public can send in questions on the town website.
Yes.
And Mr. Spear mentioned that two people had sent in questions, but those questions were not presented. Can we clarify why that was?
Are we,
I can't speak to it now. I can look back into it. I can't speak to you.
I don't get them, so.
Yeah, well,
would
we
be-
supply things as best
Yeah.
or try to do as best we can. I guess if you can be more specific on the dates, because the questions when you submit on the website come to our emails, so we can.
July
look back.
22nd, 1 week ago from today, at the town council meeting. I believe Mayor Akaji asked if anybody had sent in any questions. And Mr. Spear responded that yes, two people had sent in questions, but that wasn't proceeded with. We never heard what those questions were. I would just wonder
I thought
why
we
that
didn't
was.
have any questions last week.
No, I certainly
We'll
didn't.
have to look back and see.
We only
Mrs.
have one,
Sims.
like the website
Yeah.
questions won't work. I don't get those. The only ones we can get is through the clerk email.
Yeah,
and
the
last-
clerk email
last one
now,
was C.
so
Spear.
would you please resubmit them and then we can look at them?
So, for example, if I went home tonight and I sent this question in, what would happen with that question at the following council meeting? Anything?
No, it would probably be responded to by email, and then if you were not satisfied, we'll bring it forward at the next council meeting.
Could a person sending in a question request that it be brought up at a council meeting for
Yes,
discussion?
Yes.
So you have to
It would be our next
specifically
one on
ask that?
August the 18th. So you could request that this question be asked on August the 18th.
So I don't have to ask the question. Emailing it in is
Yes, you can.
sufficient,
Well-
and someone will ask it on
We
my
hope so.
behalf?
Well, let's for instance.
It'll be
just
read.
If I can just give a real brief example. If you ask something like Mr. Kohler did earlier tonight, how much is the engineering fees for this? I'd probably say, sure, here's it is. Email it and consider it
answered.
But
that
what
your
I'm
question's
saying
been
is if
answered.
it's something that I would like the public to hear answered, that I just don't want to have answered for my own benefit, that I think that everyone would benefit from hearing the answer. So if I ask that question and I ask that it please be read at council and presented, even though
You know,
I don't want to attend in person and present it myself,
yes.
that's okay.
It can be done via the email for August the 18th is when our next regular council meeting is.
I
You would
mean
submit it that
at
night.
any time.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, beforehand, you would have to request that, and if it can be answered, as Mr. Spear said, quickly, it will be answered. If not, then it will be answered on August the 18th.
Puts a fairly big burden on staff if you're asking something a month down the road. So if you reach out, like the week of the meeting, even or the Monday that you want a question, and we can work with
Yeah.
that. But it's trying to track
Trying to
questions
do
3
it
and 4
now
weeks ahead to be added.
too far.
We always forward
just-
everything to council, so council sees it all. But it's just a matter of, and if we answer it internally, then yes. But it is up to council at the end of the day if they get correspondence, whether they want to read it out or stuff. You can ask, and they may proceed, but it's up to council on that next step.
Okay,
Staff-
Councillor Bennett has something to say.
Yes, is it not correct that questions asked at a council meeting is supposed to be about a subject that was discussed at that meeting?
It usually is.
So if you have a question that's outside of what's discussed at a meeting, then it should go to town hall.
Yeah, clerk.
Okay, this question wasn't discussed tonight, so
Sorry?
this is outside of that scope.
Yeah.
The other question that I have is, it was said that the respondents to the town survey about the wharf, there were 71 respondents, is that
That's
correct?
correct. We were in favor of it. There were 188 responses.
And then.
71% is the 40%.
And then you accepted the results of Mrs. Kohler's survey and combined those for another number, is
Mrs.
that
Kohler's
right?
survey was done on her own on Facebook, so that's not our survey, so we would not.
I understand that, I just
She
wondered
submitted it
if
to
you-
us for our information, but it's not, we don't put it on as our information because it's from her. That would be like secondhand information, so we don't do that.
We did get it, though.
We did get it.
We all got
councillors
it,
received
copy of it.
It was in our package.
But you didn't put any weight to the information contained therein?
I did.
You know, we did speak about it, but we don't weigh it, or we don't do the calculations to see the percentages. We just read
Okay.
it. Councillor Blanchard?
Yeah, sorry. Just a quick point to your question. Like I said, I think everyone gives it the weight that they feel it deserves. But the initial survey that was provided to or put out by the town was back in 2023. And that fed into the actual decision in January of 2024. So when we look back to that survey, the numbers that we were working off there, plus all the other information that had been provided to council, there were 71, I believe, in favor of the hybrid infill option. And then of the remaining options, I think it was around, well, it was around 56 or 57 who were, I should be clear. There were 71 in favor of the hybrid. There was an additional option of the full berm, which was a full infill. There were additional people who were in favor of that. So the number of people in favor of some sort of an infill option was actually around 107 when you included the full infill or something thereabouts. The number of people who were opposed to either of those options was around 56. So that was information from a survey. And again, there were additional open houses. So there were people who attended the open houses who were not included in the survey, but we had estimate numbers of around 40 to 50 people who were part of open houses, and they provided opinions as well. So that fed into the decision in 2024. Yes, this other survey came through Facebook with, again, it was about 71 individuals submitted responses to that survey. Of those 71, 72% were opposed to this, but an additional, I'm going to say 15% were actually in favor of this. So that actually added to the number of people who were in favor of this particular infill option. And that was actually more than those who were opposed or looking for some other type of option. So a decision was actually made in 2024 based on previous information. This is new information. And again, everyone's going to weight it differently in terms of how they move forward. But that's just to give you a sense of how the decision was made in 2024 and then additional information that came up after the fact. And whether people would want to incorporate that or not into their decision tonight is up to them.
So you're talking about incorporating the number of people in Mrs. Kohler's survey?
I would say less about
Who
incorporating, more
supported-
about how much weight do you give that, because again, it wasn't something that was put out by the town.
Correct. It was an individual person on her personal Facebook.
Okay, so the other thing that I would ask then is, what type of survey could a resident of St. Andrews conduct that would hold more weight than a Facebook survey to present to the town of St. Andrews?
In my opinion, you'd have to come to council and ask them if they would like to have this survey and then be able to put it on wherever. But as a council, we're not doing any more surveys for this situation. So I would say she could ask, you could ask, but it would have to be the consensus of all councillors to mitigate this or to oversee the survey.
So when you do a survey, how is a survey planned? Who decides on all of the questions in the survey and the format of the questions?
We may suggest questions as councillors. We ask our staff to put together a survey asking the pertinent questions that we requested, or more information or more questions. We kind of consult ourselves as to those questions with the input of what we've had from people, and then we put the survey out there by having these the presentations, as well as putting it on our website, or you coming to the town office picking up a survey. We did mail out one, so it can be mailed out as well. But that's directed by the town through the council, asking our staff to oversee it, and then they put the information together from which they receive. The surveys came back to the town office, I believe.
So the survey is created in-house, it's not created by an outside agency?
No, because it's we wanted these questions asked that we felt were pertinent enough to bring the responses back. So that's why we do it in-house, and it is overseen by our staff. So we know that the questions, the answers have come in and been correlated.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope that answers the question. Council? Okay.
I do have one person, Ian Curran. You've been promoted to be able to speak. So if you want to, Mr. Curran is with CBC, but he's asked to speak and ask you questions.
Mr. Curran, you can speak.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Mr. Curran, before you start, just anybody else on Zoom who wants an opportunity to ask council, can you also put up your hand?
Thank you. Mr. Curran?
Great. So as it was mentioned previously in the meeting tonight, public engagement is a process of evolution, and I have been following this story for CBC for about a month. Today alone, I've spent my day on the phone with many residents, business owners, and scientists in the town. Many of those live on Water Street. I'll keep their names confidential for their own privacy.
Thank you.
But none of them were in support of this wharf. And that was just today alone. And I guess also thinking about the survey as well, though the survey's methodology may not be statistically significant, there is still a significant number of residents on this survey voting against the wharf. So I guess this question just generally goes out to council and maybe anyone who would want to touch on it. Why vote for this wharf despite all of these concerned residents with potential violation to their properties or other related concerns?
Your Worship, I think there's some clarification though. Mr. Curran threw that last stretch about violations to other people's properties, and that certainly isn't the intent or the thought.
No, and we don't want to destroy anybody's property. What we're trying to do is do the wharf, put it to tender so that this can go forward. It may turn out, as said by one of the counselors tonight, we may not be able to do it because it may be beyond our financial control. We also may not be able to do it because of our partners with money. It's all we are doing tonight is issuing the tender to get the wharf done. You're saying, if we do this, we're going to damage property. That's not our intent as a council. Our intent is to keep the integral wharf as part of our community, which it is, the attraction it is, the centrability that it is. We want to continue for it to continue for a few more years rather than just 5 years. That's just mine. Councillor Harland.
Mr. Curran, I appreciate the fact. Did I understand you to say that you were in downtown St. Andrews and interviewing people on the street? Is that correct?
No, Councillor Harland. I have been based in Fredericton all day, and I have been making many phone calls, not just today, but also this week, to different residents, scientists, and business owners in the area.
Okay. So what I would also just say to that is that as late as 5 o'clock tonight, we as a council have also received a number of letters from people who own businesses in the downtown who are in support of the project going forward. And I know myself as a councillor, I have had a number of people speak to me on an individual basis. So I guess it's, I say that because it's hard to account for how that gets interpreted, right? I mean, I think every councillor around this table has probably had people stop them to speak for or against this wharf. So I think that it's interesting. I mean, I think it's great that there's dialogue, lots of dialogue, but I don't know how we interpret that in terms of moving our decision forward. We can't do it or I cannot do that solely on the basis of how many people say, yes, they're in favor, or no, they're not.
Thank you, Councillor Harland. Councillor Weir, is this a question? Because we're in question period.
No, I just wanted to comment to Mr. Kern with respect to phone surveys we mail out, Facebook surveys or whatever. I'm sure you're well aware that none of them are statistically valid unless we go out and hire a professional polling firm. We're not going to get a result that is statistically valid. We're just going to get an opinion from citizens that want to be engaged. And there's always that silent majority that, they're not going to participate unless you specifically put them on a polling list and call them. So we take the feedback and I at least look at it and start out by saying, this is not statistically valid, but it does give me an indication of what a certain group of people within the town are thinking. So I just thought I would add that comment. I don't know whether other councillors take that approach, but that's how I think of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weir. Councillor
Actually, excuse me, Your Worship. I just want to say we'll reach 9 o'clock,
Okay.
and we need a motion to extend the meeting per our procedural bylaw. So if someone wants to make that
Council,
motion.
shall we extend it till 9:30? That's 30 minutes more?
I'll make that motion.
No?
As I can see, there's a few more questions there.
Yes, okay. Seconder? Councillor Heenan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? One. Councillor Michelle, please note that. It's carried. All right. Councillor Heenan.
Mr. Kern, I work in the downtown core, and so I'm very familiar with a lot of people that live and work in the downtown core. I, as of this date right now, have never had anybody object to the wharf. Not one person that I talk to. And I'm very out front, and I'm very, no, I'm not introverted. So if they have an issue, they come to talk to me. And I've not had one person, except for the ones that have mailed in the objections, but not anybody has talked to me personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody? Councillor Blanchard.
I just wanted to speak a bit to what Councillor Weir had mentioned with regards to surveys. I take the same approach as Councillor Weir. The difference, I mean, the difference, and what I do also take into account, or when I'm looking at this, when the council or the town puts out a survey, granted, like I said, we're not going to a professional polling organization, but we do send that to every single resident of St. Andrews. So every single resident in St. Andrews had the opportunity to respond to that survey. And again, you're always going to get, like you said, I agree. There are certain groups, you know, depending on where you go, you're gonna capture a certain percentage. But for the people who felt strongly enough to respond on this particular issue, and again, there were 191 people that responded to that survey who felt strongly enough to respond, you know, the results are what they are, right? And again, I always take it with a grain of salt, but I still, the fact that we reached out to every single member of this community via that survey, they had the opportunity. Some chose to respond, some chose not to. Again, others have come forward via Facebook. I put less weight on that because if you're responding to a Facebook survey, you're only getting that if you are associated or tied to a certain individual. And if you are tied to that individual, there's a good chance because of the algorithms, you are tied to them because you share some of the same opinions, right? So Facebook to me is not necessarily, I wouldn't put as much weight in. I don't completely discount it because there are it represents people in St. Andrews, representatives, citizens of St. Andrews. For the most part, it doesn't have to be in that situation. They could be from somewhere else completely, but just be a friend of someone on Facebook, right? But still, I still listen to that, and you know, especially for the names that I recognize, I understand then that they have an opinion, and that's a valid opinion. But to me, the town survey went to every resident of St. Andrews. Those who felt the need or felt strongly enough to respond did. So I can put a little more weight in that when I'm making my decision. And again, we're going back to 2024. When we actually did make the decision on the design, those are the things that I factored in back then. I just wanted to make that point. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Blanchard. Okay, so questions from, oh, but there's some still online that have questions.
So, just put a second request to anyone online to raise your hand.
And I see Mr. Holder left, and I didn't get a chance to thank him.
I dropped him from being able to speak freely without being called upon.
Okay.
He is still hanging on.
Oh, sorry.
No
I thought he had left.
And there is an email question, Your Worship.
Okay.
I think I know who it is, but they haven't been.
Sorry, are you talking to me?
No, is that Mr. Holder?
No, that's Mr. Curran.
Mr. Curran. Ah, okay. No, we're not talking to you right now. Sorry.
Okay, sorry,
Ian.
I just couldn't hear Mr. Spears.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for your time, guys. I appreciate it. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
So, Your Worship, just, there's a legitimate question, but it's, the person doesn't identify themselves except by one name. You okay to read it?
Council?
Okay.
Yes?
As a person that has completed many government projects, I have one question. Almost all projects have delays, and after viewing the scope of this project, I feel the timeline is unrealistic. We have scholars and engineers agreeing on paper about schedules, but as a contractor, I have serious doubts about the time frame and effects that it'll have on tourism. My question as follows. Is there a time delay mitigation plan for a town that is so dependent on tourism?
Yes, we do. When we put it in our plan to go to them, we do do a development plan, and those things are in account of that.
If I may, Your Worship, just clean up too. We do have, within the current tender, which hasn't been released, but we do have a penalty clauses that are fairly substantial, that if they go over, depending how everything goes, but if construction happens, we'd probably try to get the wharf portion done just as fast and delay other areas, so the wharf could be operational first, even if there was still a bit of a construction zone, say, around Market Square. So that would be the plans, but until we start working with the contractors, if we ever award the project, et cetera, we won't know those answers.
Okay. I hope that answers your question, whoever you are.
And that's all that came in by email, Your Worship.
Okay.
And no one else on the Zoom link.
Alistair, sorry, Mr.
I'm Alistair Fox. I think using the boat club as an example, a mini project of, well, the wharf expansion is kind of moot. From the blockhouse all the way down to the wharf, it's more or less a straight shoreline. With an outgoing tide and strong northerly winds, you're going to get a lot of sediment carried down around that point. The boat club, you need more sediment. First of all, I'd say I'm not a scientist or engineer, but I've sailed for 60 years, and I have a pretty good understanding of how water moves, waves, and everything else. In order for silt to build up on the other side of the boat club wharf, it would need to carry sediment up from somewhere, and there isn't anywhere in that area. I would also question the engineer who came down to do the sampling. He obviously hadn't tried to walk from the laundromat over to the wharf along the shore. You'd be up to your ankles in mud. And how he couldn't sample those areas or find anything there, I don't understand. Yeah, just do. The horse is bolted to a certain point, so it's kind of a moot point, but anyway, those are my comments.
Thank you. All right, council. Question period being over. Oh, wait, sorry.
My name's Chris Gallen, I'm from St. Andrews, born here, raised here, live here.
Yes.
And I got so many questions, I don't know where to start. So I'll just keep it real simple, right? I'm still wondering about this survey that they've done, and I've been hearing about this probably for more than 8 years, and I didn't even really think it'd get this far if we're doing an infill. And to me, the beach will adapt to whatever you do down there, breakwaters or what have you. But to do this part is part of the heritage of St. Andrews, and you're taking a wharf and putting an infill in and calling it a wharf. It's not a wharf job, it's an infill job. So when you do this, I said it before, once it's done, it's done. You're not going to change it. I never thought it'd ever get this far. And it is a heritage town, and it's about heritage. And do we have a heritage law now to protect the houses in St. Andrews?
We do have a
We do?
heritage bylaw.
Yeah, I heard about that a while ago, and I'd like to thank Cindy Kohler and others that went forward to do this. Phoebe Ann McGee and other people would be so happy to see this. It's 50 years in the making, and I don't understand if we've been working on this infill, not a wharf, for 8 years, why it couldn't go on a little bit longer, what the big hurry is to get a bunch of grant money. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anybody else? Good. Okay, then we'll continue on. So that's question period. Councillor and Deputy Mayor's comments. Councillors, you got any comments left? And the only thing I have to ask for is more bags for the community centers. Let's change the tempo here. And we need those for the food bank. So please continue to give me all your bags that you have at your house and just collecting space. That would be great. And I did have a couple, like, because I am downtown a lot and because I am acting mayor, I've had a lot of people come up to me and make comments, like when I'm on Minister's Island and I ran into two little girls, and unfortunately I lost their picture, but they gave it to me on Earth Fest Day, and we haven't had a real council meeting that I could say officially thank you, because I told their mom I would do this officially. And the other couple is a couple I met at Kennedy House as I went to have a lunch so I could go back to meetings. And I ran into Ray Cornfield and Bev Memory, who have come down here to St. Andrews every summer and they've never met the mayor before. They were so excited, and their son called him on the phone, and he told his son that he was talking to the acting mayor, and his son wouldn't believe him. So I told him that publicly I would tell their son, which I didn't get the name of, but Ray Cornfield and Bev Memory, thank you for coming to St. Andrews. Thank you for eating at the Kennedy House, and thank you for introducing yourself to me. I really enjoyed meeting you and getting to know you, and to tell your son that, yes, I did meet them, and I was very honored to have met them. So, there we go. I am doing my part of welcoming people here, but I think our best people for meeting people are our staff that are out working on the streets. They're great ambassadors for our town, as we've said before. So thank you very much. Do we have anything for closed session? No, we do not. So that's...
Pay attention to me, not to Councillor Michelle, for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. I saw the head shaking. I thought we didn't, but you didn't tell me this before. So we will go into closed session, which means everyone gets to go home early except for us. So thank you for coming, all you people that were here, and asking questions and giving us information. We have a lot of food for thought, and this is not the last kick at the can. You will have more opportunity at a later date, but not tonight. So at 9:12, we are going into closed session as, just a second here, I read my little print. Moved into closed session per the local governance as per section 68C, information that could cause financial loss or gain to a personal or local government or could jeopardize negotiations leading to an agreement or contract. I need a mover, Councillor Bennett, a seconder, Councillor Heenan, and so we are going to just give a few minutes for everybody to close down and move, and that's everything.